Exum crosses over to his left, explodes to the basket, lays it up and in. A flash from down under. Dante Exum down the left side, and we're tied at 70.
Jazz battle the Clippers late but fall. Exum shows that exact flash. We'll talk about that, plus look around the NBA 5. And a surprising little contrast to where the Jazz are after 4 games. It's all coming up on today's edition of Tip Up. Pow! Good morning. Hope you're well. Thanks so very much for taking the time to tune in today to Tip Off. I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. If you're new to the program, we give you the NBA 5 minutes of national NBA stuff, then we dig deep on the Utah Jazz. So thank you very much for tuning in. I had a bunch of daily devars I can't remember now. I had a bunch of fun things I was going to mention. I got to write stuff down. My brain's not good enough. What was it? I don't know. I don't remember because for whatever, well, there's a simple reason, but this back-to-back, or this travel, the LA travel is brutal. We didn't take off till probably close to 1 o'clock Salt Lake time out of LA last night. I got in the house at 3. It's just nobody wins when this is why we win a bunch of games. Nobody wins when they play in LA, and then come back and get us. Both our next 2 opponents will play in Portland, and then play against us. So that one's not nearly as bad. They tip off at 7 instead of 7:30. It's 20 minutes instead of 40 to the airport. You just don't. There's less people there. You get out faster. It's not as bad, but that's not a good one along the way. Fun night last night in LA. This is an enjoyable team. I've said this numerous times. My most favorite aspect of this team is that there's probably 9 different jerseys you can wear. Heck, if you're Australian, you're wearing the Joe Ingles jersey. But I mean, you can have a favorite player be Trey Burke or Dante Exum. You can have a favorite player be Gordon Hayward or Derek Favors. You can have a favorite player be Enes Kanter and Rodney Hood, and they all have different kind of things they represent, and they're all very easy to root for. And Trevor Booker certainly is going to be a fan favorite, as I've told you from day one. He's been very, very good for us. And it makes, to me, this team very enjoyable to be around and to watch and to follow. And last night was good. They battled hard. So we'll get into that in a minute. But let's lead us off with the NBA 5.
This is Dante Exum, and you are locked on Jazz.
The Dallas Mavericks offense so far this year is just ridiculous. They put up 67 points in the first half again. They're scoring 118.1 points per 100 possessions. Okay, it's early season sample size, but it's 5 more points per 100 possessions than anybody else in the NBA right now. What's incredible is that Carlisle's doing this with a bunch of guys that haven't played together. Right? You've got Dirk and Monte played together, but Jameer Nelson is your point guard. Chandler Parsons is your new wing. Tyson Chandler, I guess, classifies as having played with Dirk, but not with Monte. It's really remarkable. And their first half scoring, it's worth going back to watch, see if they're doing stuff. I mean, they killed us, right? I mean, I went back and looked through the first quarter, and I said that basically what jumped out to me was they just made the right play every single time. They just did exactly what they were supposed to do each and every time on each and every play, and they're clearly doing it to everybody. They just slaughtered Boston last night. Then the game gets close, and then they close it out. We didn't ever make the run back at them. They're giving up some big third-quarter leads. Memphis is doing the opposite. Nobody can score on Memphis. Now, in fairness, they've played Minnesota, young team. Indiana, terrible offensive team. C.J. Miles is like their leading scorer. No, they're not. Chris Copeland is. Charlotte, told you. And the New Orleans Pelicans, who are a mixed match of talent that's bizarrely put together, and they held New Orleans to 81. Frankly, you hold anybody but Philadelphia to 81, it's impressive. The Memphis upcoming schedule, this one, look at, they're 4-0. Watch this. They play at Phoenix. This is a big game. If they beat Phoenix, then they go to OKC, should win. At Milwaukee, should win. Home against the Lakers, should win. Home against Sac, should win. Home against Detroit, should win. Home versus Houston, close. At Toronto versus Boston. I mean, they're 4-0, and I would say that they've got a chance to be 12-1, 11-2. Keep an eye on Memphis. I had them as my 4th place team in the Western Conference this year. I just think Marcus Sol's that good, but I don't know. I don't know if they have the bench play. And frankly, bench play is what's going to differentiate the top 3 teams, the teams 4 through 8 in the Western Conference. If we believe that, well, actually, no, I take it back. Now it's different, right? Because Oklahoma City's not in that group anymore. San Antonio and the Clippers should be better than everyone. Though the Clippers have not fully engaged yet. They've got a big one coming up with Golden State. We'll see if they engage and look better. They looked pretty sharp for most of last night, and then they blinked, and we came after them. It was interesting. That's exactly what Doc Rivers said in the pregame meeting, is that his team's just not putting the throat down on anyone at all, and it's bothering him, and they didn't do it to us either. But the Houston bench, Beverly didn't play the other night, so then it gets all Isaiah Cannon comes in and starts, and then they're really messed up because they're not playing Jason Terry as their backup point guard. The Memphis bench needs Vince Carter, Quincy Pondexter, Costa Koufos, John Lower to play well. It's a little questionable. Golden State bench, that's pretty good, right? Andre Iguodala, Draymond Green coming off their bench if David Lee's starting. That puts them in a different class. Dallas, their bench is really good. Maybe that puts them in a different class. It's going to be just fascinating to watch how this plays out. And I do think Oklahoma City's in serious trouble. I think Oklahoma City's margin of error to make the playoffs is at 0. And I think a bunch of their complementary players are not nearly as good as we think they are. And they're going to be exposed. Reggie Jackson had 7 turnovers yesterday. I'm not sold on Reggie Jackson. I think he's Jared Bayless. Probably a little bit better. But he's not a point guard. He's not a 2. He's just kind of that hybrid player. And that works a little bit when you're playing with Russell and with Durant. But I'm not sure it's going to work now. But their margin of error is done. And so by the time they come out of this, they're going to be so far in the hole that if anything else goes wrong, they don't make the playoffs. So who does? New Orleans got waxed last night. Phoenix make a run. What about Sacramento? They're 3-1. Those are back-to-back strong wins. In LA against the Clippers, go back-to-back and win in Denver. It's a bad back-to-back terrible losses by Denver, losing at Oklahoma City and then losing at home when the other team's on a back-to-back. I know it was a day-night doubleheader, but that's a big win for Sacramento. They play at OKC, or they play Denver, then they play at OKC. I'm sorry. Sacramento plays at Denver, then they play at Phoenix, OKC, Dallas, and Memphis road trip. I think they might be home against Phoenix. Then an OKC, Dallas, Memphis road trip. Be interesting to see what they do there. If they get Phoenix at home and OKC on the road, and they go 2-2 out of that? Beat Denver as well? 3-2. Suddenly they're 6-3. They probably need hope more than anything else along the way. Is probably the singular most important thing for Sacramento to believe in themselves. Pretty interesting stuff. Only the opening week of the season. I tried to run some numbers, by the way, on who the best offensive player in the league is 3 games in. Frankly, it was a waste of time. It was kind of really a ridiculous venture to do with such little playing time for players right now. But it's worth noting some of the hottest players. Kevin Martin is on fire in Minnesota. Klay Thompson at Golden State. Kyle Korver is shooting 80% from 3 so far this year. I'm not kidding. He's 8 of 10. He's 8 of 10 from 3. It's kind of absurd. Maybe the eye-opener is how good Dirk's been so far, and that's probably what's leading Dallas. He's shooting 58% from the field, 43% from 3. I usually don't run that till 10 games into the season. I just wanted to see what showed up early. 10, 12 games in 10, 15 games in the season, you can begin to get some sort of sample size that actually tells you a little bit of something. That is your NBA 5.
This is Derek Favors. Remember, it's about playing with a purpose.
It is about playing with a purpose, maybe playing without foul trouble too. Derek, a non-factor last night, and yet the Jazz able to stay in the game. I think that there's a lot of takeaways from last night. I'm going to start with Dante. The highlight that we opened the day with is the flash. But I go back to Dante 8 preseason 8 turnovers against the Clippers. I was sitting next to John Beelan, the head coach of Michigan this year, and he was stunned during training camp of how Dante was able to take instruction and immediately implement it. Well, we're seeing that. I mean, Dante was making the same. He was dribbling into traffic in a way he could against the Australian national team or against the Australian high school kids, and then getting the ball taken away from him. And it's still happening every now and then. He split a double team yesterday and then kind of got in trouble, but he actually got out of it. But you're suddenly not seeing him do it at all. He had 1 turnover last night against the same team that had 8. There's the book. They put the book out on him, get in his body, force him, and now suddenly he's answered the book already? That's stunning. He's a really intelligent player. His mind could be as good an asset as he has, and his speed is ridiculous. His length. He makes 3 or 4 plays a game defensively with his length. When he gets ready, and I don't know what our lineup entirely be, but let's just hypothetically go with the Dante Exum, Alec Burks, Gordon Hayward lineup. That's 6'6", 6'6", 6'8" across the front. With a back line of what? 6'10" Favors and 7'2" Gobert? I mean, the problem right now is that Derek's the smallest power forward in the NBA. And I don't know how we figure out how to play both of those two guys together, but we got to figure it out at some point. Derek just never got going last night. Played 6 seconds of the second quarter, and I think just sat so long because of that foul trouble that he never was able to find his way through the game. The Clippers hard hedged the pick and roll, and so what that means for those who don't know that, there's 2 ways. If you're the guard coming off the big man pick, the other team can have their big man drop back, which is very in vogue. Drop back and kind of cover the lane and try to stop penetration until your primary defender, the guard on the guard, gets back. Well, the other thing you can do is hard hedge. So you bring your big out almost perpendicular to the pick, and you try to get onto the bot out and alter the route of the guy who's dribbling, and to do it at a pretty aggressive level. And then that guy can retreat back to his man once he's changed. Or what they were doing was staying on the defender, which is with DeAndre and Blake, you probably can do it. It's a little different way to do things. And it really caused the Jazz some problems early. 6 turnovers in the first quarter. They scored 20 points. What I really liked about yesterday is how they kept progressing. That each quarter they got a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better, and learned how to pass out of that. And really, if you do it right, you back out of it, and you've got a 4-on-3 the rest of the floor. And I think we saw that. I mean, the Jazz right now have the 4th best offense in the NBA through 4 games. I got it. It's only through 4 games. But when you consider some of the other numbers we have right now with guys like Trey or some others that are really scuffling, to have us be the 4th best offense in the NBA, to me, it's pretty good sign that these guys are surprisingly learning how to make plays and understand what they're doing. There's still a long way to go in this process, and Cleveland's going to come and hard hedge us. Dallas will not, and then you have to figure it out. The one area where the hard hedge is particularly difficult for the Jazz right now is that that's not what the Jazz do in practice. The Jazz don't hard hedge. That's not how the Jazz play. So when somebody's hard hedging the Jazz, they are not used to it, and it took them some time to get to understand it. And I think we saw them get better as the game went on in dealing with that trapping, and they'll have to learn how to deal with that kind of trapping as the year goes on. There's some teams that do it. One of the projects I never got done this summer was to look at the best pick and roll defenses and figure out how many were hard hedge and how many were dropping back. But it's pretty interesting to see, I thought, the Jazz evolve as the game went on yesterday on a road game where they were down by 15 to fight back and get back into it. Pretty encouraging. Trevor Booker has just been terrific so far for the Jazz. He is averaging off the bench 12 points and 6 rebounds. Now, I think it's reasonable to expect he'll be somewhere near that. It's not reasonable to think he'll shoot 62% and 50% from 3, but the 3 ball has suddenly become pretty viable aspect of his game, which is cool and allows the Jazz to play the stretch. Now they get really small. You, you suddenly have the smallest center in the NBA in Favors and the smallest power forward in the NBA, probably, and Trevor Booker on the floor at the same time. So you become very small and going to have a hard time lengthwise defensively, particularly if you're playing the non-aggressive defense where you're dropping back. If you're playing with, suddenly you're going to end up playing with Favors and Booker, I wonder whether you alter what you're doing defensively. Everything we've done in training camp is about channeling the defense to a certain spot, but if you're suddenly playing undersized, maybe you have to alter some of that, which is not necessarily the philosophy that I think Quinn wants to have so far. Has everybody kind of noticed what Gordon Hayward's doing, by the way? We're 4 games into the season. It's very early. It can change. But as of right now, he's averaging 19 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, shooting 48%, 37% from 3. Pretty strong. Alex averaging 15 points a game. He's only shooting 39%, but he's shooting 3 threes a game, which is great. He's hitting 38% of them, which is great. He's getting to the line 5 times a game. Ennis and Trey have not clicked in yet. Trey will get going. You know, Trey's not a 33% shooter and 11% three-point shooter. I mean, this is a little ridiculous. Maybe he's thinking too much. He's trying to get the line. Trey's going to the line 3.3 times a game, which is much better than it was a year ago. He's 2 of 17 from 3. Some of that he'll get over some of that. Dante, who's actually doing some things pretty well. He doesn't have huge assist total. He's not making a lot of plays, but you're seeing little. He attacked someone yesterday in a way I hadn't seen him attack someone yet. His efficiency is pretty high, though. He's shooting 53%, but he doesn't really take a shot unless he's wide open. Good night, though, I thought. Down 15 on the road against the Clippers. Didn't get knocked out. Battled all the way back. Tied it along the way. And then Chris Paul and Blake Griffin came in and ended the game. And they're great. They're better than we are. They're 2 of the top 5 players in the NBA. That's the reality. Oh, I just remember the thing I was going to open the show with. Maybe I'll open it with tomorrow. But has anyone else just watched any other games? Has anyone else noticed how gorgeous the game is right now? The game universally across the NBA right now is just fabulous. It's a gorgeous game to watch. Every game I watched the Clippers Sacramento game, which is Sacramento's one of the least attractive teams to watch play. They were actually pretty interesting. I watched part of the Portland Golden State game the other night. It was incredible. Ball movement, quick tempo, moving. It was just terrific. I'll talk about that more tomorrow. All right, let me see if we got any questions today. We do. We have lots of questions today. Let's go to Aaron Hefner. We love Canner. A lot of people hope he figures the system out. Has a long future. However, assuming it didn't work out, we traded him in February. What do you think would be looking for in return potential trade partners? That's a very complicated one because you're dealing with a restricted free agent at the end of the year. So somebody has to decide that they're all right taking Ennis when he's going to go be a free agent at the end of the year. It's the same way that if Detroit tries to trade Greg Monroe, I think it's going to be very difficult for Detroit to trade Greg Monroe because Greg Monroe is a restricted free agent at the end of the year. Oh, excuse me, is an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year. I'm intrigued by Greg Monroe, by the way, just in general. I can't figure out whether he matches. He's not particularly athletic, but he's a great passer. I think it's turned out that he can't shoot as well. I'd have to really dig into his game a little bit. But my guess is that Detroit's going to commit to Andre Drummond, and then Monroe goes by the Wade side. He's being asked to come off the bench right now. I'm sure he's not too pleased about that in any way, shape, or form. He's 6'11", though. He's out of Georgetown, to me, he was just incredible passer. He's up to 3 assists a game, or 2 years ago. Then he dropped last year to 2.1. He's a decent rebounder. I'm kind of intrigued by Greg Monroe. I'd have to get a better understanding if he could play with any of our guys. The problem is that his shooting has gotten less good every year. His first year, he didn't shoot much, but then his 16-foot plus shot went from 43% to 31% to 24%. You'd have to go back and really look at some of his Georgetown stuff and try to figure out what he's got. But you also have to figure out what his market's going to be. If you were to trade, again, if you're going to trade for him, that's where they started, it's almost impossible to trade for Greg Monroe because he's an unrestricted free agent. And what are you willing to do with that? there's a chance that Ennis ends up just taking the qualifying offer and taking another year next year. And then becomes unrestricted the next year, kind of the way Greg Monroe did. He was a restricted free agent. Someone's going to have to offer him a lot of money if we're not going to at least match it. So maybe nobody offers him the way nobody offered Greg Monroe. Frankly, maybe he doesn't have a much better year and nobody's really sure what they want out of him. I don't know. I think there's a chance he takes the qualifying offer. If he plays like he did last night, we'll take the qualifying offer. If he played like he did 2 nights ago for the rest of the year, we're not going to even take the qualifying offer. He's got a lot of growth. I know tip-off is unique. I haven't heard of any daily podcast like that. Have other teams' production folks approached you about tip-off, wanting to implement similar for the franchise? The only other thing that is similar to what I do, no other team in the NBA does it, is Gary Hill for the Seattle Mariners does this. Gary's a good friend of mine. I hired Gary in Seattle when I worked for the Sonics and the Storm, and he has risen up through the ranks from that and is following this model with the Seattle Mariners and had mammoth success with it this year. Got recognized by Major League Baseball, by MLB, and some things like that. So sorry, so that's the only one. Yeah, I'm the only one who does this, which either means I'm stupid to do it or you're lucky to have it. I don't know. I am laughing out loud because a tweet just went out that Lakers head coach Byron Scott wants better defense from Carlos Boozer. Philip Malone in Australia. He's my Australia conduit. He is my Australia ambassador here, Philip Malone. I'm going to have to follow you on Twitter so I can retweet all of your Australia stuff so everybody starts following you instead of me. You mentioned at one point that you can't have a horses for courses starting lineup. Why not? It's only tradition. What if players understood the reason and it's good for the team and the players? I get what you're saying. It just doesn't work that way. It's just a pride. It's a pride. Jeff Van Gundy got into this a little bit with Zach Lowe the other day on their podcast. Guys need to, Jerry used to always talk about guys need to know their roles and exactly what they're going to get and who they're going to play with and when they're going to play. They play better that way, particularly bench players, young players on the road if they know their role. So I think that it just doesn't work that way. Like you can just sub faster and change the minutes, and it's an easier way to do it than deal with the confusion and egos of changing the starting lineup all the time. What is Burke's role in the offense? I'm not seeing it currently. Don't see how he complements Hayward offensively or defensively. Well, I thought Alec, and I'll have to go back and rewatch the game if I get time. I thought Alec had a really poor defensive night last night. If you go back and listen to my Quinn Snyder coach's interview, on the day Alec signs his extension, I said, what's the next step for Alec? And he said, staying with concentration off the ball defensively. And, this is something I've talked about the whole time. The league scouts didn't like him off the ball offensively or defensively. And I thought he got beat a bunch of times last night. What happens is he stands up tall and relaxes, and then when the other guy gets the ball, now he's got to get down into his defensive crouch and then start defending. Well, the other guy's ready to go, so the ball hole is making one move to Alex 2, and he's gone. I thought that was a poor night. So how does Alec's role? I mean, Alec is a penetrator, creator, disher. He's got to get back to passing the basketball a little bit. But frankly, I think Alec's trying to figure out what his role is. Is he a shooting guard, three-point shooter? Is he a penetrator? How does he fit? I think I think everyone compliments Hayward because I think Hayward compliments everyone, frankly. Gordon really makes his teammates better at an alarmingly high rate. Much more than I think people give him credit for. In the offseason, to me, that was the number one thing that stopped being talked about last year with Gordon Hayward was how much he makes his teammates better. And I'm sure it's going on again this year. So I think that to me is probably the the area in which you look at Gordon and just he compliments everyone. So Alex can have to just be, and really to the same thing Alex always had to work on, is Alec is going to have to become better without the ball. And what that probably means, as much as anything at this point, is when when Gordon's making a play, he's got to make sure he keeps himself available, and that's a hard in the right spot and in spaced correctly, so that things and guys can become available, because that's probably as big an issue for anyone. Here's a little. I was trying to pull up something on Gordon's value on Wowie, but it does not seem to be coming up. But it's an interesting. It didn't come up exactly right. Their search didn't work off the top of my head, or off that quickly. If you go take a look at what guys shoot, when they're on and off the floor with Gordon, it's pretty eye-opening what the difference is. All right, I think that wraps us up today. Byron Scott wants better defense from Carlos Boozer. That's beautiful. Hope you're well. Thanks for joining us. Tomorrow, LeBron's in town. Tickets are still available. Friday's a good one to come out to too. I hope you're all making it out. And have a good time. It's a fun team. Go grab whatever jersey you want. Go grab a group of 5 people and all have different jerseys. So, all right. Talk to you guys soon.